Welcome to The Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, it's Holden. I am an alcoholic. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today, I'm being joined by David.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on, Holden.
Of course, thank you for joining us. So David and I actually met within the rooms. He came in, I would say, about 2 months into me being in the rooms, and we've developed a friendship and a pretty solid fellowship in keeping each other accountable for sobriety. So why don't you tell everybody your age, how long you've been sober, and what your drug of choice was?
I'm 25. I've been sober for 56 days, and my drug of choice really was any kind of opioid, but primarily heroin and, of course, alcohol.
All right. Well, I know, of course, I share the same struggle with alcohol. Heroin, not so much, because I personally did not like it, but I did try it. I know that coming into these rooms and everything, we all kind of carry our own different experiences and different backgrounds. And I know that both your parents are actually within the program. So kind of take us through having parents within the program, how you became an addict yourself.
Okay, yeah. So both of my parents are still in the program. They still work a program. They're in the fellowship. And, being young, I would go to meetings with them and I would see what was going on, but I didn't really understand what was going on. I just thought that they were like meeting with some friends, and as I grew older, I began to understand what they were doing, and actually, like early on, it instilled a healthy fear of alcohol in me. And so in high school, some circumstances were happening, primarily with my brother, and I began to use marijuana. And I had this idea that if I just, smoke some weed, but I stay away from alcohol, that I'll be good. Like, I didn't make this connection that, if I begin using drugs, I can be a drug addict, and so that's where that started for me. And as I, progressed in my drug use the way we do, my parents were always there for me, but, one of the things that they believe is that they can't, call me an alcoholic or an addict. I've got to give myself, that label. I have to admit to myself that I'm powerless over these substances. And so, like I said, they were there for me, but they were letting me go on my own journey.
And I think that's incredible, actually, as parents, to, even though you may not agree with your children's decisions, especially when it comes to substance abuse, that they allowed you to make those own choices for yourself. And we're kind of pretty much supportive through your addiction and now supportive in your own recovery.
Right. And I don't want it to be confused that they were enabling me in any way to continue with drinking and drugging. But like I said, they didn't know if it was a phase. They didn't know if I was just experimenting. Again, I was young. But they had it in the back of their mind, okay, we're both, alcoholics. Like, maybe he's got this disposition. And so, but they did let me, discover that on my own. And before long, it was very apparent to me that, I had a seat in these rooms. It took me a while to find it, but, eventually I did, and I'm very grateful for that.
So let's lead up to the first time coming into these rooms for you, because I know relapse is a part of your experience. So take us back to the first time you got into these rooms. What finally led up to you being like, holy shit, I need help?
So, the first times that I was exposed to any kind of 12-step program on my own, because, I had grown up in these rooms, right? But for myself, it was, like many of us, through the state of Texas. I had to go to, classes and make meetings. Whenever I was 17, I had a charge that I was having to go to these. And, again, at that time, I didn't think that I was an addict. I didn't think that I was an alcoholic. I thought that, it was just I was just a victim of bad luck. All my friends are doing it. The people that I hang around are doing it, and I'm just the unfortunate one that got caught. So I didn't take it very seriously at that time, and I got off of pretrial bond. I was doing that for around 9 months. I got off and I continued to do the deal, and as time went on, things kept getting worse. I kept suffering more consequences. I kept getting into some pain, and eventually, in I want to say 2019, I had started going to NA, and I was doing that for a while. Wasn't really working a great program, and eventually, I went out again. And so it wasn't again until late 2021 in December that I had gotten in enough pain. I had suffered more consequences. I was definitely feeling the spiritual malady that I gave in, and I came back in. And let me tell you, Holden, like, my life has been getting exponentially better in just 2 months.
So, as you said, I mean, of course, you went to NA, so you chose AA this time around. So, tell us what's different. I mean, what is different this time around that it seems to be sticking and sticking so much better than before?
So with NA, and my purpose here isn't to bash any 12-step program. I mean, it works for a lot of people. It didn't work for me. And let me say, NA didn't fail me. I failed myself. I wasn't doing what needed to be done. But coming into AA, and so I began to try AA because I looked at my parents. I just saw the happiness in them. I saw what their relationship with their higher power looked like, and it was attractive to me. So what I did was decide that I was going to come to AA. If it's working for them, it can work for me. And so I came in, I got a sponsor quick, and this dude has just been awesome. Like, we got to work, and we've worked the steps very quickly as outlined in the book, and it's just done for me what I couldn't do for myself.
So, I know you said that you had a kind of a religious upbringing.
Right.
So, did you shy away from religion? I mean, you seem to have a much better connection with your higher power now than you did then.
Right. So, growing up, we did go to church a lot. There was a church that we went to in particular that was very condemning. I would say almost even legalistic. And yeah, that contorted my vision of a higher power, what that looked like in my life. I can remember being in something like fifth or sixth grade, and I'm a dude. I was checking a girl out, and I immediately felt this sense, oh my God, I'm going to hell for looking at somebody this way. And that scared the shit out of me. And from then on, I had this idea of this, condemning, smiteful God that is just going to come down and, throw lightning bolts at me whenever I do something wrong. And there wasn't enough that I could do right to get into heaven. And like that really kept me away from any kind of religious body. Coming into the program and working the program, I've gotten, a personal relationship with a higher power of my understanding. And that higher power is, loving, is forgiving, wants the best for me. And that's like a lot different than, what I had grown up with, obviously. But it's what's working for me, and I find a lot of peace and serenity in that.
Well, that's good. I mean, same thing with the higher power. I mean, as previously stated in episodes, I held a very major prejudice towards it, and now I realize that my life when in addiction of alcohol and meth that my life was entirely unmanageable. I could not cope with things on my own. I had to use substance in order to cope with anything that happened in my life. And coming into the program, it allowed me to build my own understanding. Still 4 months in, I don't know exactly who or what my God is, but I know that it's there. Um, and that allows me to lean on something more than who I am as a human, and put my faith into and allow me to just build. I mean, as me and David spoke before the recording, was defining who your higher power is will come with time, as long as we know that it's there. Um, who or what it is will reveal itself over time, as long as you keep that conscious contact with it, with him or it or the universe, whatever it may be. So, in this program, I know your sponsor as well, and I know that him service, of course, is a massive part of recovery. So, before we go into an H and I, tell me how service has played a factor in your recovery.
Okay, yeah. So my sponsor has been super encouraging of going with him to do H and I's. And for y'all listening that don't know what H and I is, all it is a hospitals and institutions. So treatment centers, rehabs, that kind of deal. And what we do is we carry the message to these rehab centers and these treatment centers, uh, and we bring a small meeting to them. Typically, we go over the first 3 steps. Sometimes it gets past that, depending on if a majority of the clients there have been working steps or not. Uh, and so, like I said, we bring that message, and it's been super beneficial to me. I mean, the 12th step, right, is carrying this message, and for me, that's what God's will is to help other alcoholics and addicts find a way out of the hell that they're living in. Because I know that's what it was for me. I was living in a hell, and to be able to help somebody that I know exactly what they're going through just does something for me that I've never been able to do for myself. I get the feeling I've always been chasing with drugs and alcohol from helping other addicts and alcoholics. I mean, it's just there are no really words to describe it whenever you see, these people nodding their head and they're getting it. It's a beautiful thing, and I never would have gotten to uh, experience what this service is like if I wouldn't have worked the steps rigorously and had a sponsor that encouraged this. I remember being in rehab and thinking, wow, like these guys are freaking awesome. Like I wish that I could do that. And it was always a wish. I never thought that that could be me on the other side of the room. And here I am today. And I'll tell you that it's a blessing, and it's nothing short of a miracle.
So, as you said, we're going to go back. So, what did service look like for you before going to H and I's?
Service before looked like making coffee at the group. Service before looked like cleaning the tables, greeting people. That's one of my service commitments now at a group, and that was the beginning of it, right? Just making coffee for people, cleaning it up, cleaning the room, and that was enough, at the time. I hadn't been through all of the steps, but I immediately got to serve my group. And in doing so, it allowed me to get out of myself. And whenever I'm not thinking about myself, that's a good place for David. I get to be of maximum service to my God and to my fellow man. And I believe that that's, one of the primary things that we do in this program is we get out of ourselves and we help other alcoholics.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I mean, as David said, there is a time where the service in your groups, or just to your fellow person in the groups, like making coffee, kind of is enough to, depending on where you're at within your recovery. So if you are not ready to go to a hospital and have or a rehab and have 40 other people just staring back at you yet and sharing your experience, just go to that group, make the coffee, say hello to somebody that you have never seen their face before, make them feel welcome because that newcomer that doesn't get any single person saying hello to them will make them feel unwelcome and they may never come back. And maybe that was the night that causes them to go out to the point of killing themselves. You don't realize how just a simple hello, hopefully you're well, good to see you, could really impact somebody's evening and make them feel important and wanted. Um, and as your recovery progresses, and that service opportunities will even go greater with going to homeless shelters, going into rehabs, sharing your story when you are comfortable and when your higher power will definitely let you know when you're ready for that step and put you in those rooms to allow those people listening to know that they're not alone, that even going through rehab and thinking that shit, as soon as I get out of rehab, I'm going to go immediately back to drinking, which some people do. Um, it allows them to know that, hey, you can go to rehab, you can get out and rebuild a life and a sober life and a happy life. So, David, as you said, in the H&Is, the hospital and the institutions, you kind of go through steps 1, 2, and 3 the most. So, what did your step 1, 2, and 3 look like?
So my step 1, 2, and 3, like I said, I mean, we went through all the steps fast, but I think that we even went through the first 3 like in a day or maybe 2 days. I came in knowing I was powerless, to substances, and it's kind of funny. Like even out there, I knew I was powerless, and I had conceded to that powerless, but in a different way. I was conceded to the fact that okay, this is my life. I'm always going to be an addict. I'm always going to be an alcoholic, and I'm going to use these substances to my death. And I mean, that's a terrible place to be. That's a scary place to be. But I put myself there. And so, coming in and beginning to work with a sponsor, I had already made, this conscious decision of, okay, I'm powerless. Like my life looks like shit. My relationships look like shit. And, there's nothing that I can do about it on my own. And so that step 1, is ultimately I'm in this cycle of stopping and using, stopping and picking up again, stopping and picking up again, and I can't get out of this cycle on my own, and I'm perpetually fucked. That's what step 1 is for me. That's David's step 1 truth. Step 2, like I had said earlier, I kind of already had this conception of God, and in step 2 it talks about our conception of God, whatever it may be, is just enough. That's a great place to be in. It doesn't matter, if this is a small God, if it's a small higher power, or if you've brought prior beliefs in. And so I was right where I needed to be. I had this belief in in a God, and let me tell you, it's changed a lot over 2 months. It's become personal. It's not just this far away higher power in some book that, like I thought before, was just going to throw lightning bolts down at me. And then step 3 is turning my will and my life over to the care of this God as I understand Him. And that as I understand Him is super important because, like in step 2, like whatever our conception of this higher power is just enough. But I have to be willing to accept and believe that there's something bigger than myself that can restore me to sanity. And I truly believed that I could be restored to sanity because I had seen it so many times. I mean, you come into these rooms and you hear the stories of what these people were like before. And, a lot of times we don't know what these people were like before. And to hear them and what they've come from, I could relate with so much. I could relate to the hurt, to the pain, the anxiety, the depression, the feeling of hopelessness and, being alone. I could get with that. And to see them, have smiles on their faces, the camaraderie, I really believed that this could happen for me. And so I became very willing. I became very willing to take suggestions. I don't know it all. My best decisions have brought me to where I'm at. And, you know, David's best decisions are pretty bad. So, you know, I got super willing, uh, something that my dad used to tell me was whenever he was working through this, his sponsor asked him, how willing are you to do this? And he said he was willing. So his sponsor said, well, if I told you to get naked right now and run around this parking lot, would you do it? And that's how willing he was. And I mean, that's a goofy example, but like that's how willing we have to be. We have to do whatever it takes to get clean and sober. I mean, I would do anything it took to get my alcohol and my drugs. If I just put a fraction of that drive and that willingness to connive and get drugs and alcohol into my program, oh my God, I'll be over the moon. And that's just a place that we have to get to. And unfortunately, some people haven't been in enough pain or they haven't, suffered enough consequences, and so they don't get it and they go back out and they have to hurt some more. I know I did. And at least the seed is planted. And I really pray for people that come in and out, because I've been there, and I know what this thing can do for them.
Exactly. I mean, this program for many of us is an incredible experience and can give us a lot of hope for ourselves and our future. And so that's going to be my next thing is, of course, here at the Sober Unicorn, we like to talk about experience, strength, and hope. So your experience, of course, we've already touched on. So where do you continue to get your strength to continue? And working through the program and getting sober, what hope do you have now for yourself and your future?
Wow, that's a good question. So, I mean, like with this program, like I've said before, my relationship with my higher power has grown exponentially, and that's where I get my motivation. Doing these H&Is is where I get my motivation. Coming to meetings and being with my people is where I get my motivation. My prayer life and my meditation life has evolved, and before, I had this idea that meditation was like some, kumbaya shit where, I'm like listening to some kind of music or something like that. And that works for a lot of people, and that's great, right? But meditation has become for me sitting down in a quiet place and letting my higher power speak to me. And I quiet my thoughts, and I just allow him to convey whatever it is he is trying to convey to me. And that was something that I had never even thought about before. That was like an entirely new concept. And doing that and praying has been, like I said, just more than beneficial to me. It gives me hope whenever I don't have any. Whenever I'm fearful, I say a prayer. Whenever I'm, agitated or doubtful, I say a prayer. And like to somebody from the outside looking in, that might sound weird
Nuts.
or nuts. Yeah, exactly. And I for a long time, my prayers were completely selfish and self-centered, and they were what a lot of us call foxhole prayers. And I always wondered, man, why aren't these prayers working for me? Why am I not getting this $1,000,000 I keep praying for? Why am I not, getting the girl that I'm praying for? And it's because I was only saying these selfish and self-centered prayers. And, if I would have gotten some of the things I prayed for, I probably would have killed myself. So I have to take that into account too. So, my prayer life has become something that is focused towards doing God's will, being His agent, as the big book calls us, being His his employee and ultimately doing, what he would have me do. And, like I said, I believe for me that's helping other alcoholics and addicts find what I've found. And, that's the beauty of it, man, is, I get to do for others what was done for me. I get to make that cup of coffee for the newcomer because whenever I came in, I was greeted with a hot cup of coffee and I was asked what my name is. And, these people could see the hurt in my eyes and they could tell that I was anxious and scared and I was this little boy in a grown man's body that didn't know how to act. And they still continued to love on me and they still continued to come to me and just pour out into me. And that's just something that's so awesome about the fellowship. Like I could go on for hours about the fellowship and what that means to me. But I get to do it for the next guy, and that's super special to me.
Yeah, and as you said, I kind of want to go back a little bit. How your prayers initially were very selfish and self-centered. As many people know, we as humans are very selfish people, and I can tell you what, my prayers were the same way. I was just praying for work success, life success, business, podcast success. But the moment I pulled back and just started praying for the next person that was hurting, the friend that was struggling, the person I still dislike, just praying for them to find happiness and hope within their heart, the moment I started praying for other people was the moment that I started receiving blessings. That the things that I was looking for, the happiness that I was praying for, started to come the moment I stopped worrying about myself and started being selfless and not selfish. And I think that's why in my prayer today, every time I pray, I always ask for guidance to continue to be selfless and not selfish. Because the moment you start seeing that happiness in other people's hearts, you tend to, that fills your own soul with happiness to know that you, just because of what you did with for no fucking selfish gain at all, to see somebody else happy, it just fills your own soul. So I want to kind of close with, now that we're coming to the end of the episode, being, of course, gay and fabulous hosted as we are, David. I know that you identify as a straight male. And so I kind of want to ask, like, what would you tell the person, a part of the LGBTQ community, that is struggling and fearful of coming into the programs of judgment?
Look, y'all, this program, this fellowship, we do not discriminate. We do not, have creeds or, need for religion or, like I said, discrimination towards the LGBTQ community or race or any of that. Like this is an all-inclusive program, and through that, I get the privilege of being able to fellowship with people that are gay and lesbian and transgender and all of the above, and I get to love on them. I get different perspectives. I don't have to live in this closed box of oh, I'm straight, like I can't participate with them or anything like that. Like Holden has become an awesome friend of mine, and there's other people in the community in our fellowship that I've grown close to, and it's really cool. Like I get a lot of perspectives from them. I can bounce a lot of things off of people, and it's really a tool, right? Like being able to be open-minded and see things from another perspective. And so what I would say to somebody in the LGBTQ community is, you don't have to be afraid of receiving judgment, right? You don't have to feel as if you don't belong, because there's a seat in the program and the fellowship for anybody. And I think that a lot of people fear judgment, and that keeps them away from the rooms. But let me tell you, like, this is one of the most, if not the most, loving and compassionate group of people I've ever been around. And them showing me that compassion and love has in turn been able to help me love myself. And I just get to spread that with, my fellow man, woman, and it's an awesome thing. It's an awesome thing.
Well, thank you again, David, for joining us. I'm so glad you took the opportunity out to speak with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober-owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.